Welcome to the Sculptor's Apprentice, where you learn how now. And now your guide on this epic journey of learning, E. Spencer Schubert.
Hi, I'm E. Spencer Schubert. Welcome to the Sculptor's Apprentice Session 1. Thanks for being here. We really appreciate it. We want to give you information that improves your studio craft if you're a sculptor, an artist, or any other kind of maker, and we want you to be involved. So please post in the comments if you have any suggestions. Today we're going to talk about sculpture boards, sculpture bases, whatever you want to call them. These are the things that you sculpt on. And there's a few things we do in our studio that I think really make them a pleasure to use for a long, long time. First things first, safety. You only have one beating heart, 2 eyes, 10 fingers, 2 ears, and it only takes a second to protect them. So put in your earplugs, put on your safety glasses, and if you don't feel comfortable, find someone who is. But let's go to the other side of the studio and I'll show you a few different materials you can use. The first kind of material that you could use is just regular old CDX plywood. I wouldn't recommend it because things like to stick to it. They like to stick right here to these edges, lots of silicone, lots of plaster. The only reason we ever use this is if we have an offcut down in the shop that we can just cut up and use instead of throwing it away. If it's all you have, then go ahead and use it. But if you're going out to buy something, stick with one of the next two things. Your next choice is going to be melamine coated particle board. Now you can buy this at Home Depot in a 4x8 sheet if you have a table saw, or if you go over to the closet section, you can buy it in 12-inch wide, 10-inch wide, and 8-inch wide strips, and then you can just cut it to length with a jigsaw or a handsaw or some other kind of hand tool. And that's a really important thing for those of you who don't have full shops. It's important to be able to buy these products that are almost already cut up so you're not dealing with a full 4x8 sheet trying to get it in your car or your van and then having to cut it into little pieces. Sometimes Home Depot will cut a full-size sheet into more manageable pieces for you. That depends on your region. It's kind of hit or miss and the cuts are never straight. So if you can manage a 4x8 sheet, great. The melamine's kind of thin. This is only going to last you 2-3 uses, maybe even 1 use if you're using water-based clay. But it's definitely better than plain plywood. Your next choice is our favorite, and if we're buying something to make sculpture boards, we're buying phenolic coated plywood. And that's what this is right here. It's used in industry for concrete forms. It comes in a 4x8 sheet. It's difficult to get your hands on. We buy ours from Whitecap Construction Supply. They're a nationwide company. You can Google that number and find them in your area. The good thing about phenolic coated plywood is that it's super durable. It's got this really thick coating of phenolic resin on the top. It really lends itself to repetitive usage. We've never used one of these to the point where we had to replace it. So it's a great material if you can afford it and if you can cut it up, then that's the one I would use. So now let's head down to the shop and I'll show you how to make one. Okay, so now we're down here in the shop. I went ahead and purchased some of this shelf-grade melamine so I can show you guys how to do this in short order if you don't have access to all the facilities. And then we're also going to put together a 12-inch sculpture board. It's a good size for life-size bust with a little bit of shoulder and then figures 18 to 24 inches. When you're choosing your size, make sure you leave enough room for a backboard if you're going to do an armature. Quite often I do that. I'll make a square for a certain size sculpture and forget that I need 3 or 4 more inches on the back for my back bar. So make sure you do that if you need to. Now let's cut some wood. Okay, make sure you're wearing your eye protection and your ear protection while you're doing this and you have your dust collector running. And if you don't have access to a table saw, it's great to be able to use those melamine shelves from Home Depot so you can just use a hand tool to cut them to length. That makes it really easy for those of you who don't have full shops. Okay, so now we have our pieces cut here. I've got a 12-inch piece for the top of the big one. I've got a 10-inch piece for the bottom of the big one. And that gives us an inch all the way around. And then I went ahead and cut the melamine shelves up. This was a 10-inch piece and an 8-inch piece. And so I just cut those to length, and then they'll work out great just like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to countersink some holes in the bottom, put 5 screws in, and then we're going to route the edges so they're nice and smooth. And then we'll do one more thing before we're finished to make them a joy to use. We're countersinking these holes so that the screws sit flush with the bottom of the board when we're done with them. Just make sure you put a hole in each corner and make sure the head of the screw sits below the bottom surface of the board. We're routing the edges of the boards so that when you hold them all day long, you don't get any splinters or cut your fingers or your hands or anything. If you don't have a router, you can just use some 80 grit sandpaper to ease those edges. That trim router is $89 at Home Depot, and if you're making a lot of these, it's a pretty wise investment. We've got our edges routed over here. These are really smooth and nice. I can touch the whole thing. and not get a splinter or a cut or anything. The last thing, these edges we've cut, they're all bare wood on both. And the top is our nice melamine and phenolic coated. But if we put a layer of Johnson's paste wax on it, on the edges and on the top, nothing will stick for a good long while. Which, if you're using these boards over and over again, is really nice to be able to, on your second, third, fourth, and fifth sculpture on one board, still have a nice, clean-looking board. So I'm going to go ahead and put a coat of paste wax on these. We will see you next time. If there's anything you want to learn, please post it in the comments. We love having you here. We love showing you how to do things. Thanks. See you next time.